Elections Committee, today being Tuesday, February 9th, 2021. Welcome everybody to our Tuesday committee hearing. And we have two bills on the agenda today. And so I think everybody's getting pretty familiar with the process as far as voting, some of these other things. And so we'll just go ahead and go into the actual presentations of our bills. At this time, we have Senate File 1, Senator Mathews, and I'll move Senate File 1. And Senator Mathews, you can go ahead and present your bill. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, committee members. I have Senate File 1, which is a bill that's trying to help fight the COVID-19 pandemic in the best way possible to thread the needle between the need for safety in our workplaces for employees and customers, as well as the need to keep businesses open in a safe manner to provide funding and income for some of those same employees that need it around here. So we have Senate File 1. Madam Chair, I do have an A6 amendment that staff has alerted me to that helps clarify and narrow and define the scope that this bill is focused on circumstances regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. And after some discussion in council, we thought it would strengthen the case to make sure that we had words carefully crafted to reflect that. So that is the A6 amendment, if the committee would mind considering that at this time.
Thank you, Senator Mathews, and I will move Senate File 1, the A6 amendment. Senator Mathews, you've already somewhat explained, and this is your first stop, if I'm correct. So this would be an author's amendment, Senator Mathews?
No, this is the second committee stop, Madam Chair.
Okay. You have, Senator Mathews, you have explained your amendment somewhat. Would you need to add more, or do you feel that's sufficient?
No, Madam Chair, it just adds one line on line, page 1, line 20, to clarify that these executive orders would be those issued relating to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Senator Mathews. And members, this amendment has been posted and released to all folks concerned. So with that, members, we'll proceed to a vote. I again will move the A6 amendment to Senate File 1. Members, take yourself off mute, please. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion prevails, and the A6 amendment is adopted to the Senate File 1. Okay, Senator Mathews, with that, if you go into presenting your bill now that it's properly amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, I have a question, if I could, of Senator Mathews.
Just a moment, Senator Clausen. We usually give the author the opportunity to present their bill first before we do questions.
It was a question on the amendment, Madam Chair.
And still, it's been amended now on to Senate File 1. We'll wait with questions until the bill has been presented. And I will call on you first, Senator Clausen, for a question because now it's part of Senate File 1.
Thank you.
Senator Mathews, present your bill, please.
Madam Chair and committee members, the bill has a couple sections to it. The first part is a requirement that notwithstanding the named executive orders related last year to the COVID-19 pandemic, if a business presents a safety plan and follows it related to these areas listed, best practices for health and wellness, social distancing, cleaning, sanitation, protection, and etc., and make a good faith effort to maintain a safe and healthy workplace, that they are allowed to be open with no state-imposed limitations. Now, this is not to say that a business could choose to continue operating with self-imposed limitations, and many businesses might decide that it would be in their best interest and would be wise to do so. In fact, I would expect that to be the case. But the limitations that might be the best ones to work for them could be different from the ones imposed on them under these executive orders currently. And we heard in our first committee hearing in the Jobs Committee last week a number of business owners that came and testified to that very thing, that they are out to make sure that things are done safely and securely for their employees and for their customers, that regardless of any law or any executive order, the biggest pressure that helps them move to make sure they're doing it safe is the response of customers. And if customers don't feel safe in their business, that will hurt their business faster than anything. So they are in the business of making sure that their facilities, their businesses, their restaurants remain completely safe for their customers and their employees. The second part of the bill will add some strengthening to the need for legislative involvement in the process of executive orders that would seek to partially or fully close businesses down. This is again in response to particularly the second shutdown of businesses last November, when there was legitimate disagreements over the effectiveness of those shutdowns based on the numbers and the data that everybody has the opportunity to look at and evaluate as to just how effective those were in causing the numbers to start coming down again after the spike that we saw in November. So the bill would purport that any executive order issued under Chapter 12 and the part that we amended now related to the COVID-19 pandemic that seeks to partially or fully close a business must have a 2/3 vote of the legislature and must give 14 days notice to business owners before taking effect. And we heard that time frame is an important piece for business owners, because the day and a half or 2 days that they got last November completely took them off guard, hurt them in pretty significant ways. They had, many restaurants especially, had orders placed of products, of food, of beverages, especially for the holidays, the Thanksgiving season coming up, and then suddenly we're not able to sell much of it when the shutdown came in very swiftly and very suddenly. So this is a runway of time that the businesses are specifically asking for, that is very needed in the future. And that is the essence of the bill, Madam Chair. I do have, I believe, one testifier, Mr. Chesick, as well, that wants to speak to it. He helped testify last week, and we had, I believe, 5 or 6 different business owners, restaurant owners, and so forth that testified to this part in jobs last week of how important this was for maintaining and operating their businesses. But businesses want some certainty and don't want to continue living in fear that at any time they could be caught off guard again with another partial or full shutdown. And many of them are hanging on by just a fingernail right now, and we need to try to help give them a bit of certainty for them to be able to stay afloat as we continue to move forward in dealing with this pandemic. So with that, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to take questions or turn to our testifiers.
Thank you, Senator Mathews. I appreciate that. And Senator Mathews, before we go to your testifier, I will give Senator Clausen one opportunity to, I'm not going to go to other questions from members right now, but Senator Clausen, you wanted to ask a question of Senator Mathews. If you would go ahead and do that now, Senator Clausen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In regard to the amendment that was made, I just wanted to clarify that that limits the scope of the bill to only COVID-19. It doesn't restrict future executive orders regarding, let's say, future pandemics or other state emergencies. That was my question. And I assume by the amendment, that's what the intent was, but I just wanted to clarify that with Senator Mathews.
Thank you, Senator Clausen. Senator Mathews, would you respond to that with a clarification?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And Senator Clausen, yes, that would be how I would read the bill as well with this amendment, that it would stay limited to this current COVID-19 situation.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Senator Mathews. And Senator Clausen, if you take down your raised hand, then I'll know the next time whether it's a new question or what. Thank you so much. All right, with that, we'll go ahead to the first testifier that Senator Mathews has here today. Mr. Chesick, I'm looking for you on camera here.
Can you hear me, Chair?
I see you now, Mr. Chesick. Yes, I do. I see you now. But the tiles, they sometimes move around and I'm trying to find you so I can be sure that you're on camera and off mute for it. So Mr. Chesick, with that, go ahead and proceed with your testimony and be sure you say your name and your group you're representing for the audio record. Thank you, Mr. Chesick.
Thank you, Chair Kiffmeyer and committee members. My name is Tony Chesick. I'm the Executive Director of the Minnesota Licensed Beverage Association. The MLBA has been a nonprofit trade association since about 1953 and has proudly represented and has become an educational resource for license holders. We represent bars, restaurants, and liquor stores. Our hospitality coalition, our hospitality industry was changed on March 16th, 2020, when I received a call from the governor's staff alerting me to the fact that bars, restaurants were to be shut down on St. Patrick's Day. Since that time, the MLBA has been at the table. What I mean by that is the MLBA is asked to be a part of a group of industry leaders and experts to both communicate to the industry, but also provide important and influential information and data to the Office of Deed, Department of Health, and the governor's staff. We've done so very proudly. This group that was assembled has since been called the Hospitality Roundtable Group that has met weekly throughout the pandemic and most recently bi-weekly. From day one, our association, its over 2,000 members reacted. As hospitality industry, we do a lot of things well, but one thing we take exceptional pride in is keeping our staff and patrons safe. The members of the MLBA have listened to the mandates set by Governor Walz and the Department of Health and did our very best to make a good faith effort to follow these to the letter. When we were asked to mask up, we did. When we were asked to post signage, we did. When we were asked to develop specific safety and preparedness plans, we did so with the understanding that we would be somewhat rewarded for our efforts. As an industry, we are taking this pandemic very seriously, so much to that point that we have hundreds and hundreds of members that have gone above and beyond to develop new and innovative methods to keep their people safe in their space. Governor Walz has said, to no fault of their own, our bars and restaurants close. If that's the case, then why are we still closed? I've reviewed the most recent contraction rates county by county and can clearly see that we are not in the space we were just a few short months ago. With vaccinations here, with license holders complying with strict guidelines in place, the MLBA fully supports Senate File 1. Lastly, we took a poll a little over a month ago and got about 1,100 respondents. Of those 1,100 respondents, 84% said that their business would be closed permanently in the next 90 days if there was not a significant dial turn. Minnesota, we are ready to be open for business. Chair Kiffmeyer and committee members, thank you for your time and consideration, and I'll hang out for questions if you have them, Chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chesick. Appreciate your testimony. Amazing diligence of your organization and the active involvement. That's very much to be commended. Members, with that, we have one more testifier here. We have Ms. Heising.
Thank you,
Hello
Madam
there.
Chair. Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to testify today. My name is Melissa Heising, and I'm Legislative Director for the Minnesota AFL-CIO, the state's labor federation of more than 1,000 local unions who represent more than 300,000 working people throughout our state. I'm here to speak in opposition to Senate File 1 as amended because it removes safety protections for workers in the middle of a pandemic, putting working people of color and Indigenous workers, particularly women, at the greatest risk. A recent study by the Center on Women, Gender, and Public Policy at the Humphrey School found that women, and particularly women of color, in Minnesota are more likely to work in high-risk essential jobs with greater risk for exposure to COVID. About 40% of Asian women, 37% of Native American women, and 30% of Somali women in the workforce fall into this high-risk category, according to the report. Senate File 1 as amended allows businesses to operate with no capacity limitations and no penalties for violating executive orders. It says they must have a COVID preparedness plan and make a good faith effort to maintain a safe and healthful workplace with no enforcement. Working people know from experience during this pandemic that some employers have not always complied with executive orders, even with the enforcement mechanisms that are currently in place. We have received countless reports from workers in industries across the state that their workplace does not have a preparedness plan or has an inadequate plan, has not sought worker input on the plan, has not offered training or enforced compliance with the plan, has provided no PPE or inadequate PPE, lacks cleaning supplies and disinfection practices, is not conducting temperature checks, is not enforcing social distancing, is requiring workers to come in when their jobs can be done from home, is not offering paid time off for workers who need to quarantine, is not offering reasonable accommodations for workers with an underlying health condition or a family member with an underlying condition that puts them at higher risk for serious illness or death if they contract COVID, is retaliating against workers who raise safety concerns. And in public-facing workplace settings, we have heard many reports of customers who refuse to wear a mask and verbally abusing employees. Again, this has all been occurring even with the current enforcement mechanisms of the executive orders. So if this bill were to pass, employers could ignore their preparedness plans with no consequence. Removing enforcement and penalties would only make this problem more widespread and put more workers and their families at risk. While vaccines are underway, the pandemic is not over, and we're seeing the emergence of new strains we know little about that are more contagious and possibly more dangerous. Workers in industries across Minnesota continue to be concerned their working conditions do not adequately protect themselves and their families from COVID-19. They need increased enforcement of workplace protections in the executive orders, not the elimination of enforcement. We respectfully request committee members vote no on Senate File 1 as amended. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Heising. I appreciate your being here today and taking your time to be here. With that, members, I will open it up for questions for Senator Curran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a question. I requested a roll call. I request a roll call and that the record of the vote be recorded in the Senate Journal pursuant to Rule 12.10.
We need 3 members to address that. Okay, seeing 3, we will have a roll call vote in accordance with your motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, anybody else have a question at all? Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions. Ms. Heising, you rattled off a number of statistics for people working in essential businesses, and yet this is really addressing those businesses that aren't essential. So how would Senate File 1 change, since we're not changing the Department of Labor requirement for a preparedness plan, which is required for all essential businesses, how would this put employees at any additional risk?
I think I'm sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Pratt. Thank you for the question. I think our primary concern here is the removal of enforcement of the protections in the executive orders.
Madam Chair, may I have a follow-up?
Senator Pratt.
Thank you. Ms. Heising, I don't see any removal of enforcement. The Department of Labor still has a preparedness plan guideline for each industry. You still have the ability to report unsafe workplaces through OSHA. I'm still struggling to understand where the removal of any protections are. What this does, in my mind, is just protect the business owners and, quite honestly, the jobs of the people working there.
Ms. Heising.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Pratt. I think we see even when there are enforcement mechanisms that employers don't always comply. And so the bill, as I read it, says that there will be no penalties to businesses who violate executive orders.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Ms. Heising. Well, that's specific to the executive orders, but it doesn't exempt them from OSHA requirements, which are covered by the preparedness plans, and that every business must have a preparedness plan. So, Ms. Heising, I respectfully disagree with your assessment of the bill. I think this is a common sense bill that, as we said in the Jobs Committee, there was a change even in the contact tracing, and we're still waiting for Mr. Huff from the Department of Health to get back to us. But 1 week before the governor issued his executive order, the contact tracing went from finding all places of contact, whether it be a school, a correction center, a retail establishment, to only asking if you'd been to a bar or restaurant. It was clearly targeted to find cases to the hospitality industry. And then it was changed after the executive order was issued. This to me is a common sense way to protect the property rights and to protect the jobs of the people working there. There is no relaxation of OSHA, which creates a safe workplace for employees. There's no removal of the whistleblowers, meaning that people can still feel safe to report unsafe workplaces. Madam Chair, I think this is a common sense bill that leaves many of the protections in place. And Senator Mathews, I support your bill.
Thank you, Senator Pratt. Are there any further questions or comments? I don't see any hands raised, so we'll proceed to the roll call vote as requested. And with that, I will have the clerk call the roll. Mr. Neubauer, please.
Senator Kiffmeyer.
Aye.
Senator Howe.
Aye.
Senator Carlson.
No.
Senator Osmek.
Aye.
Senator Pratt.
Yes.
Senator Coran.
Aye.
Senator Clausen.
No.
Senator Fateh.
No.
Okay, members, there being 5 ayes and 3 nays, the bill is passed and we have a roll call vote. Members, this is Senate File 1 as amended, will be recommended to pass and be placed in general orders.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ms. James, do we have things covered properly?
Madam Chair, yes, the motion that you all just voted on was to recommend the bill to pass as amended and then to be referred to general orders.
Thank you very much, Ms. James. Senator Mathews, closing comments or?
No, Madam Chair and committee members, thank you for the discussion and for the vote. We will continue to make sure that protections stay in place for the safety and protection of workers, as well as keeping the jobs preserved. So appreciate the discussion.
Thank you, Senator Mathews. With that, members, we'll proceed to the second bill today, Senate File 4. And Senator Osmek, you may move your bill or make motions as you see fit for your bill. With that, Senator Osmek, again, for the audio record, do the usual, but otherwise you can go ahead and present your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To get the bill in the shape I wish to have it for presentation, I would move the A1 amendment, please.
Senator Osmek moves the A1 amendment. Is this your first stop, Senator Osmek?
You are correct, Madam Chair. You are the primary committee of jurisdiction. This is the first stop. This is an author's amendment.
Okay. On this author's amendment, members, I'm assuming it's been posted as we try to do with that, members. On the let's see, want to make sure of the A1 amendment. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. A1 amendment to Senate File 4. With that, Senator Osmek, please proceed to present your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate File 4 is a bill that most of the members in this committee should recognize, with only one exception. Senator Fatah was not here last year. This is my bill that hit the Senate floor and actually did have bipartisan support last year in May. This changes the peacetime emergency declarations and the governor's emergency powers so that we are more of a co-equal branch of government. As you all know from your civics classes when you were in school those many years ago, we have three different branches to our government. We have the executive, we have the legislative, and we have the judiciary or judicial. And they are to be co-equal branches of government. The current legislation for emergency orders makes it so that the legislative, or currently it has the legislative branch as a passive participant when emergency orders are executed by the executive branch. I think we will all recognize that back in March that the governor did exercise his emergency orders, and I believe rightfully so. But as time has gone on, the emergency orders have become less and less about providing for Minnesotans, more about how the executive branch is wrestling and taking more and more control. The executive branch, through the emergency orders, has now put in fines and imprisonment for people who do not follow the emergency orders that he has declared. There has not been a single bill that has been sent through the legislature for this. And we all know that to make laws, to imprison people, to fine them in their bank accounts, that by law, we start with bills in the legislature, we pass it through the House, we pass it through the Senate, conference committees sometimes come into play, and then we send it for signature by the governor. What's happening right now is the governor unilaterally is making decisions that cause imprisonment and fines for Minnesotans, not to mention impacting their lives directly and their ability and their freedoms under the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of Minnesota. What this bill does is makes the branches more co-equal again. It makes the legislative branch, the Senate and the House, active participants. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that in this bill, on page 2, line 2, is where we, as the Senate and the other body, have to, after 30 days of an emergency order, it doesn't change the fact that the executive branch can execute an emergency order and follow the current procedures. But after 30 days, the legislative branches, the Senate and the House, have to take an active role and vote to extend those orders. This is different than we currently have. Under current law, under current statutes, we are a passive voice. In other words, we have to take action only when we want to. This makes us part of the solution. This makes the legislative branch, the House and the other body, involved in approving an extension on orders that can go on now for 9, 10, 11 months. And I don't believe that when the emergency orders statutes were put into place, that was the legislative intent, that the executive branch would go and continuously extend orders on and on. This makes us as a Senate also culpable in what happens going forward, and the orders and the continued executive orders that the executive branch exercises. This makes us responsible. I would think that the executive branch would actually support something like this, because this puts us, so to speak, on the hook for what is happening in Minnesota under the current law. This has less to do with COVID. That has more to do with how does government operate in the state of Minnesota. There are also additional changes on line 2.15 and 2.20 dealing with expiration and a new peacetime emergency. And there's also in line 2.20 talks about an additional declaration can be made for a different emergency. So members, that is the bill. Again, it did receive bipartisan support in the last legislative session. I believe it brings us into compliance and brings us to a co-equal position. And more importantly, it makes us part of the solution. And members, I'll take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Senator Osmek. Members, we're going to go ahead and go to the testifiers, but Senator Osmek, in your bill as well, there's been a little bit of a sticky issue at understanding what makes up the 30 days and so on. I noticed you've cleaned up that language as well, which is appreciated, I think also needed. With that, we will go to the testifiers, and we will have Ms. Heising.
Good afternoon again, Madam Chair and members. Thank you. Melissa Heising, again, Minnesota AFL-CIO. I'm here to speak in opposition to Senate File 4 because requiring an affirmative vote by the legislature to extend the peacetime emergency would likely have the effect of removing protections for working people contained in the governor's executive orders. To name two examples, Executive Order 2054 protects workers from unsafe working conditions and retaliation during the COVID-19 peacetime emergency. And Executive Order 2081, the statewide mask mandate, reduces transmission of the virus. There are also executive orders specific to reducing the spread of COVID and protecting workers in specific types of workplaces, for example, healthcare and school settings, that would go away if the peacetime emergency ends without legislation to replace those protections. Over the past 11 months, the legislature has had many opportunities, both in regular and special session, to pass legislation to replace the protections in executive orders and has failed to do so. The legislature has not shown itself to be capable of managing a public health emergency. As I stated earlier, we are still in a pandemic, and workers in industries across Minnesota need the protections in executive orders to continue and not be eliminated. We respectfully request committee members vote no on Senate File 4. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Heising. Senator Osmek.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I appreciate the fact that the AFL-CIO has a crystal ball, that they are able to look into the future and be able to see all these things that they think may or may not happen. The truth of the matter is that your commentary has nothing to do with the change that I am proposing, absolutely nothing. And secondly, there is nothing that prevents the executive branch to proposing bills that can go through the legislature, but has not up until this point in time. Every one of these orders, every one of these executive orders could have gone through the legislative process and can right now. Unfortunately, the legislative branch, or the executive branch does not want to, in my opinion, follow this procedure. They do not want to follow the democratic process that we have lived in Minnesota for over 150 years. So I strongly disagree with your assertions and your insinuations that all these activities would or would not take place. This is not in the bill. It has nothing to do with the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Osmek. Ms. Heising, I'll give you one opportunity to respond.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Senator Osmek. I'm not claiming to predict the future. I am just pointing out that the legislature, as it stands, has not passed any legislation to reduce transmission of COVID or to protect workers in the workplace over the course of the pandemic.
Thank you, Ms. Heising. Senator Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question for Senator Osmek. You actually criticized the powers of the governor or of executive orders to legislate arrests and fines. And I'm wondering if your bill does any restriction of arrest and fine powers that are exercised in the first 30 days or in any extension of those of the emergency orders. Are you okay with those first 30 days with the present powers that are given to the governor?
Senator Osmek.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Carlson, I don't dispute what needs to happen in an emergency situation in the first 30 days. However, what this does is after the first 30 days, the executive branch must come to the legislative branch to have an extension. So if what you're saying is actually occurs, that a fine or a penalty or imprisonment is put into play by the executive branch, that we then would be approving the extension of that emergency, that we would be approving, taking affirmative action to saying that, yes, the executive branch should be allowed to extend these fines and fees and imprisonments. And that happens once every 30 days because we would have to come back to extend once every 30 days.
Thank you, Senator Osmek.
And Madam Chair,
Senator
just
Carlson.
to follow up, to be clear, then you're not objecting to the governor's powers in those first 30 days. You're just saying that it's in any extension that the legislature will now also agree to those powers of arrest and fine and imprisonment that are initiated in the first 30 days.
Senator Osmek.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Carlson, yes, I agree. And more importantly, by us taking the action of actually voting to extend those emergency orders and the fines and the fees and the penalties, we are by default actually legislating, because we are, by our approval, not just because we don't take action, but by our pushing a button on the Senate floor, we are actually approving what the governor is doing. And I don't disagree with what happened the first 30 days of this current emergency situation. I don't think there is on record any Republican in the Senate or the House that necessarily complained. I think it was right in that we had to prepare in those first 30, at least in the first 30 days, and even in the first 60 days, I think we as Republicans on our side of the aisle were not necessarily complaining, because there was an emergency situation. We needed to open hospitals. We needed to get hospitals in such a position by which they could accept and receive and safely treat people with this infectious disease. If you remember, Senator Carlson, just one block north of the Senate building is Bethesda Hospital. That was opened and prepared during that 30-day period, during those orders that he executed. Did I disagree with that? Did anyone in this committee disagree with that? I don't believe so. But now that has changed. That has turned now, there's no longer an actual hospital. That tells me that the emergency is necessarily not the same as what happened in the first 30 or 60 days. That's why this bill is needed.
Thank you, Senator Osmek. And I will go to Senator Fateh. And members, if you finished with your question, if you just put your hand down so we know that that has been taken care of. Senator Fateh.
Yes, thank you so much, Madam Chair. Senator Osmek, this is the first time that I'm hearing about, in your introduction, the imprisonment of folks due to violating the executive orders. So can you give us some examples of these people and also why they were imprisoned?
Senator Osmek.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Fateh, what I'm speaking more directly to are the threats that are being put in place to businesses such as Alibi, I believe is the name of the establishment in the South Metropolitan area, that they have had fines imposed, I believe. There has been imprisonment talked about through the Attorney General's office. I don't necessarily believe that anyone is necessarily in jail at this point in time. However, the executive orders that the executive branch executes right now can do that without legislative authority, without legislative approval. There is nothing that stops the executive branch from having that take place. Absolutely nothing.
Thank you, Senator Osmek. Members, with that, we're going to go to our next testifier, and this is Mr. Hickey. Mr. Hickey, welcome to the committee. Glad you could join us today. And if you would go ahead and say your name and the group you represent for the audio record, and then proceed with your testimony. Welcome, Mr. Hickey.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Mike Hickey with National Federation of Independent Business. I always have to ask, am I coming through okay?
Yes, you are.
Good. The past missteps on Zoom have been corrected, and thanks for giving me a little time to speak in behalf of this bill. We want to thank Senator Osmek for bringing this bill forward. This bill really needs to happen, or a change needs to happen in this area. We represent 9,000 small businesses, and many of you are familiar with our group, National Federation of Independent Business. And these small businesses have been through a lot, as you know. Small retail was closed in the spring, opened at half capacity in the summer, finally at full capacity. Hopefully we don't go back on that. Hospitality has really suffered, as you all know. It's received most of the attention and publicity. Some estimates are we're going to lose half the establishments with the various closures they've had to go through, which will really be a sad situation as you drive around your community and look at different places and say, I remember that used to be open, and I remember enjoying that place. And some estimates are we could lose half. We put this issue on our annual survey, and the members strongly supported it, close to 90%. And the small business community really feels we need to change the process for how we deal with emergency powers in this state. This law originally passed in the 1950s. I don't think has received a lot of attention. I don't think a lot controversial has come out of it till now with this, dramatic pandemic we're going through. But I think Senator Osmek has really struck a good balance here of giving the governor pretty much carte blanche authority, significant authority for the first 30 days to deal with what could be at times a dangerous or obviously very concerning emergency in this case. But then it's important to get the legislature involved. And I think that's the great balance the bill strikes. And the 201 people with election certificates need to be involved, and more involved than you are now, versus just coming in every 30 days and making a vote. The law is even more dysfunctional due to the fact that we pretty much have a stalemate at the legislature regarding this. If we had a different scenario, such as all one party rule, there'd probably be a lot more negotiating going on between the governor and the legislature. Or if we had a legislature opposing opposite to the governor, I guarantee you, there'd be a lot more negotiating going on. But it's really dysfunctional in this situation because one body is totally upholding what he's doing and the other one's objecting to it. So I think this strikes a good balance about getting the 201 people with election certificates more involved in this. And I don't know if this version passes or some other hybrid, but I think this is a very good starting point for trying to change how we deal with emergency powers.
Thank you, Mr. Hickey. I appreciate your testimony today. And it is really sad all of us see this in our communities. Mr. Hickey, could you address the issue, though? You work with the small businesses. What have you observed in regards to large businesses? Are you seeing the same effect of closures or other things like that? Could you get any information about the larger ones, Mr. Hickey?
Madam Chair, I've heard a lot of complaints, and it's the obvious one we all noticed when small retail was totally closed back March, April. There was some good day in May when that ended. And, here you've got tiny little businesses in your community where when I've been in them, I've rarely seen more than a couple people. Sometimes I'm the only customer. And then we're all jamming into big box retail. And it's very crowded some days when I was there. And everybody noticed that. And that was a huge complaint we received from the membership about this is not fair. And I don't know why that was done. I seldom have been in a small business retail establishment that's been crowded. I don't mean a restaurant. I don't mean a bar. I mean a retail establishment. I've seldom been in one that's been really crowded. And the only one that is actually is my hardware store. And they were very essential. And so that didn't change at all. So yeah, that was a really common complaint.
Thank you, Mr. Hickey. With that, Senator Clausen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question for Senator Osmek. Under the current state law, governors have the authority to declare peacetime emergency up to 30 days, as we know, and they can be extended every 30 days thereafter. And the legislature is not required to approve the extension, but it does have the authority to terminate the emergency authority. And we've done that I think we had 7 special sessions where that could happen. So the authority of the legislature is that it can terminate an emergency authority of a governor. What is the difference between the current law that has the authority to terminate versus your proposed law?
Senator Osmek.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the question, Senator Clausen. This goes back to my commentary on passive versus active. As a passive participant, which is what we are right now, we only take action when we would feel the necessity, and it takes both bodies, both the House and the Senate, to actually remove that authority. It's obvious to me that one body may defend their political party and their political ally in the governor's office and not wish to step on those toes. What this does is it makes both bodies required to be active participants to actually take a legislative vote on the Senate floor, in the case, and I'll focus on the Senate, on the Senate floor, take an active vote to extend what is currently happening. It is not a passive role, it is an active role. What this comes down to is, how does government operate in an emergency? And should that emergency go on forever without a check and balance from the legislative side? And I suspect from your commentary, you believe that the check and balance is already there. I don't believe a passive check and balance is necessarily correct and right. And so it's your choice if you think that way, and I'm not going to put words in your mouth. I suggest to you a passive role or an active role where we actually have to take a position is a much more appropriate methodology, when in particular the executive branch has wide sweeping authority to, as I said before, create fines, penalties, fees, imprisonment, any of these actions. I think that there has to be a more active role by the legislative branch.
Thank you, Senator Osmek. Senator Howe.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to make the record clear. And if Ms. Heising wants to respond, she can. But I find it odd that the AFL-CIO did not see that the first responder workers' comp bill that the legislature passed was not trying to protect workers. So I find it odd that she claims that the legislature hasn't done anything to protect workers, when I think that was a very valuable piece of legislation that the legislature passed and the governor chose to sign. Now, I tell you what, we've passed a lot of legislation that the governor and maybe the House decided that it wasn't important. But I believe that that was a very crucial piece of legislation that we passed. And I find it odd that the AFL-CIO finds that that was not protecting workers.
Thank you, Senator Howe. Ms. Heising.
Madam Chair, Senator Howe, thank you for that. Thank you for correcting me. You are correct. The legislature did pass that bill providing a presumption, rebuttable presumption of COVID for first responders and frontline healthcare workers. And we did support that. And that is, I will admit, I had not included that in my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Heising. Senator Osmek, I have a question for you. So the comments today have been regarding the legislature and what we've done or not done. But Senator Osmek, do you recall in those special sessions were bills passed during special session that were signed into law?
Madam Chair, the answer is yes. I believe in almost every special session, we had some type of legislative activity that took place. In particular, with emergency funds that were coming from the federal government, the executive branch needed additional authority to be able, I believe, and I'm not on finance, I believe you are, Madam Chair, but I believe what occurred is there were a number of bills that provided the executive branch some levels of authority that were necessary because they could not either appropriate or spend certain funds without legislative authority. That did take place. The issue comes down to the rulemaking authority that was being imposed by the Department of Health and other agencies that were outside of the legislative purview. And those are the types of things that I think we need to be a much more active participant in. So, Madam Chair, you are absolutely correct. We did take many different actions during the umpteen special sessions, and I forget how many we had, but a lot of them.
Thank you, Senator Osmek. I was involved in 2 or 3 of them in a variety of ways and getting legislation passed during a special session. So I think the legislature showed that indeed they are able and are capable of passing legislation and going through the process to assist the executive branch in the implementation of things that were needed. And Senator Pratt, I'm going to ask you specifically, I know you were very, very involved in particular with businesses and also with the jobs connected with them. Senator Pratt, could you talk about the bill that you worked on during special session in that regard? Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would say we worked on 3 bills, 2 of which were successful and I think one that was a little bit frustrating. In June, we passed a small business grant program using the CARES Fund and some general fund money to help small businesses that had been struggling through the spring. That was a bipartisan bill that came forward, and we worked with DEED. We also passed, in response to Executive Order 20-99, the one in November that Senator Mathews addressed, we passed a over $214 million aid package to business. Now, I think to Senator Osmek's point, in October, we had proposed an additional small amount of money to be distributed to businesses. We found that, and really to fix a problem that we had in the June legislation, the governor's office would not engage, and then actually executed that did that through executive order after the election. And I think to Senator Osmek's point, by holding the governor accountable, so one, we've passed numerous emergency responses to this, and 2, I think it holds the governor responsible to work with the legislature in those areas where it's possible. I believe that the governor, through some of the changes in unemployment, were not emergency changes. In fact, my staff stood ready to work with the governor, and he made the changes by executive order. And so I think what Senator Osmek's bill does is bring balance to it. I don't want to make this about Governor Walz. As Senator Osmek said, this was a bill that was originally drafted back in the 50s as civil defense, and it's been used in natural disasters. I don't think it ever contemplated something like we're in today. And I think this is a good rebalancing bill, and appreciate Senator Osmek bringing it forward.
Thank you, Senator Pratt. Senator Clausen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just a comment. I think that the latest dialogue here is some great examples of the legislative response during a governor's emergency powers, and I think it demonstrates the authority of the legislature during emergency powers, and I appreciate you bringing those up. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator Clausen. And what I would say is that we could do it even more so if we were initially engaged after those first 30 days. 201 minds of a legislature in a bipartisan way are certainly an asset for the governor. These are very great, complex, a variety of things going on. I think the full involvement of the legislature on a regular basis would be much more beneficial to Minnesotans. This is what it's about. Senator Carlson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And I guess I want to echo on Senator Clausen's points there, but also just go back a little bit about our legislative process. The responsibility of the legislature is to work together to develop bills and initiatives that can be passed in both bodies and then signed off by the governor. And if the we can't just blame the governor for not doing our job. And our job was way back in the first special session when we adjourned without figuring out how to resolve these problems. We should have stayed in session at the time and done our job. Both the House and the Senate work out some agreeable provisions that could be put into a bill that the governor would sign. That is our job as legislators.
Thank you, Senator Carlson. That is one approach to do it. Once the governor calls us into special session, we could just stay in session, and we could even be a little bit more active, but nonetheless still have a 30-day cyclical kind of effort. So obviously the original statute was not considering this going beyond the 30 days, that an emergency was a crisis, was an emergency right then. And I think I think my main point here is there have been occasions where statements have been made, the legislature couldn't do this, or the legislature didn't want to do it. My point was saying the legislature is willing, the legislature is capable, and in those opportunities did do so, but it could be done a lot better. Hindsight is always 20/20, but I think in this case, we're trying to use the look back and saying, how can we improve this law so that it does strengthen the checks and balances and the values that come from the legislature, and not just be functioning for a year under predominantly the executive branch full authority. That to me is going beyond what I think the statute originally had in mind. Senator Osmek.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Senator Carlson, you just made my point of why this legislation is necessary. It is because the one branch of the legislative branch refuses to actually participate and be part of the solution. And it isn't the Senate that I'm talking about. There is no incentive for the executive branch under the emergency orders right now to necessarily work with the legislative branch to develop these, because ultimately speaking, when one house will not vote under any circumstances to remove those emergency powers, then the executive has carte blanche and can continue this every 30 days to continue as emergency orders. What I'm saying is, in order for us to continue to be part of the solution, we need to take an active role, not a passive role. And that isn't to say we would have executed and voted to extend the orders in June, July, August, September, October. I'm not going to get my crystal ball and look back in time. But what I will say is, you just made the case why this is important, that both bodies of the legislative branch need to be part of the active solution, not passive in the back seat.
Thank you, Senator Osmek. We'll have our final Senator Fateh, you'll be the last one to speak here or ask a question, and then we'll proceed to a vote. Senator Fateh.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And to the previous point, I support expanding workers' comp to cover COVID-19, but the bill that this body passed last year only covered first responders, and it did not include other essential workers, such as folks working on grocery stores, in retail, and so on. But I also want to point out that workers' comp provided some compensation for workers after they have been harmed on the job. It does nothing to keep them safe to begin with, and that's my major concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Fateh. With that, members, thank you for a robust discussion. Thank you to our testifiers for being here today and giving their valuable input. And with that, members, we will proceed to a vote. And if you would please unmute at this time and be sure that senators are on screen. And so I will, Senator Osmek, you can move your bill as amended.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move that this body do approve Senate File 4 as amended and refer to the Senate floor in general orders.
That being moved, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign.
No.
Nay.
Okay, I see 3 noes. There being 5-3, the bill is passed. Senate File 4's amendment is passed, and we'll proceed to general orders. Thank you very much, members. I appreciate your being here today and your robust discussion. And with that, our business being concluded, we are adjourned. Thank you.